All right, we're going to talk about these two screens on the Newmar New Aire, and I'm going to be controlling some information via a knob over here on the left. You'll see that that knob below the vent. That's one of the Silverleaf control panels. There's a knob. I believe you can push down on the knob if I'm not mistaken, and there are, I think, 5 buttons as well there. So I'm not going to pan back over to that area, but I'll let you know if I'm using that control. So when you first turn on the coach, these screens will come on, and the last thing that you saw here will display. You may have just noticed that the screen dimmed and came back. The light sensor, and I think you can adjust whether or not it automatically dims or not, is right here. So if I cover that, it's going to get darker. But the buttons, the touch sensitive buttons here are not wired in. They don't do anything, at least not for me, and that doesn't appear to be important because this screen basically appears to slave off of the other screen. So don't be alarmed that these don't work. I was starting to wonder if I had something that was broken, but that this does not appear to supposed to be able to respond to anything or need to. So we can hit, if we push down on the power button, all that's really doing is muting and unmuting. Obviously turning it is going to change the volume. If you press and hold the button, the screen will go into this sort of banner mode. If you press and hold it again, it will reboot the system. So you'll see the progress meter here. You'll see some information over here. This is how I first learned, this is basically by accident, that there is some Silverleaf information available on the screens. And I'll show you how to get to that once the system is up and running, because that will disappear. All right, so the reboot is useful. I've used it a few times. Unfortunately, the system doesn't appear to be particularly stable. The two situations I've gotten into where I've had to do a reboot is because the navigation system has been just completely screwed up or really slow or something to that effect. I've gotten into situations where these buttons don't do anything. I'll hit navigation, it'll beep, but it won't go into navigation. And I've also had a situation where I was not able to enable house mode, so I had to reboot the system so that I could enable house mode. And we'll talk about what that means in a minute. Standard radio controls here. I mean, a radio is a radio for all intents and purposes. Not going to go over what's in here, so I'll let you figure that out. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you hit navigation, you'll go into navigation mode. You have to be yeah, whatever, and use the navigation. I think perhaps what I'll do is save navigation deep dive for a separate video. You can come in here and program information about the RV. The settings that were in there were way off for the New Aire, so it'll definitely be good for you to go in and make sure that your height is programmed correctly, your weight, the fact that you don't have propane because it was defaulting to you do have propane and stuff like that, so at least for me. So definitely go through the preferences, make sure your stuff is set correctly. So it's actually been so long since I've used DIM. It looks like you just keep pressing DIM 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I frankly don't remember what that does. It doesn't seem to be doing anything for me, so excuse my ignorance on that. I don't know what that is. Looks like I probably should have studied this more before the video, but it looks like favorite, because every time I hit fave for favorites, I'm assuming here I always go into XM, so I'm guessing you can set your favorite button to go to one of these 10 items here. So instead of having to come into menu and hunt and peck for it. So you'll notice if you don't select something in the menu, it'll go back to where you were, and it's a pretty quick timeout. So menu, radio, that's where we were. Menu, media center, You know, I suspect, yeah, I actually don't know much about this. I'm thinking that you can put an SD card in somewhere and put your MP3s and the like on there. This looks like a file browser for playing local media. Satellite we were just in, Bluetooth. So I did pair this with my my iPhone, no problem. So it's showing me the signal on my Verizon Wireless, the battery on the phone, the current song and its status. Got a keypad for dialing, and if you you can go through your calls and you have to do that by hand in order to load the system up with your phone numbers. I'm used to systems where that's just automatic and not nearly as slow. And just information about the phone, and you can remove it, add a new one if you like. So that's how you would pair up with the new one. Basically set up your settings. You know, what do you want? Do you want to do, I'm not sure what HFHS stands for. I'm guessing this has to do with, do you want phone and audio, perhaps, modes. Yeah, so I probably actually want AV. That's interesting. Yep. New territory here. Can't tell you exactly what that's all about. Auto connect, I think, is self-explanatory. Bluetooth gain as well, the mic gain. Pin for probably for pairing. You can mess with your audio. There is a fader front to rear. There are speakers all the way in the bedroom. For me, there's a pair of switches back there that can disable those two speakers. Pretty weird, but you can fade the audio to prefer the back a little bit more if you want to. And obviously left and right balance. There are 2 pages to the screen, so if you touch that top right icon, you'll come into the second page. So just some more settings. Settings for video, settings for the system. Make sure I'm not skipping stuff here on you. System, so there's 2 pages of system stuff here. Yeah, there's the auto dim setting. So maybe now the dim button actually does something. Oop. Yep. So I will put it in automatic. Page 2. And that's it for settings. So let's go back into, I think we were in Bluetooth, make sure there's nothing else here. All right. HDMI, have not played with this to know where the HDMI input is or how you would add it, or if that's even like why you would want to do that. Maybe another camera or something to that effect. Not for watching a movie. Auxiliary input, same idea. Camera control. This is where you start to be able to control the screen to the right, and also where you get to see some of the Silverleaf information. So the mode I'm in now is just the rear-facing camera. So this is what's selected, and there are 3 versions of the rear camera that you can see. So the one I'm showing now is more straight back. It's obviously impossible to tell what's going on the screen here, but you can basically virtually point the camera down a little bit further so you can see your toad if you have one, or all the way down more to take a look at your jack. So I like to leave it facing backwards. This is where you can select a couple of sort of split screen modes. So if you want to see the left and the right split screen, if you want to see 4 cameras, you can do that. 3 cameras. and then there's that really awesome 360 view. So it's still a split screen. You get your 360 view on the right plus your rear on the left pane. You can also look at individual cameras, so just front. You can look to the side right from the mirror. We'll talk about the information on there, and you can also look down from the middle of the coach down and do that for the left and right. So we'll go back to this mirror rear view. Both of these show the Silverleaf information on it. So let's talk about that. I'm going to be now using the knob on the left that I referred to earlier. So if I just twist that knob, you'll see that I can select different things. And so if I go down and say go to view history and I push that knob in, I'll see some information about that. Press it again, I end up heading back. So this is trip information. There is a button on the panel called trip, so that's what I'm in now. I'm going to go down. I'm basically going clockwise, and I'm going to go down to a button labeled chas for chassis. So if you did have Silverleaf compatible TPMS in here, you would actually see that. They didn't give us that, so this is relatively useless. So I'm going to move on to therm. You can guess what that means. So you can change some of your settings, some of your scheduling settings. So I'm going to scroll all the way back to the left, meaning the beginning. So you can turn your heat on and off for your all zone or for your 3 individual zones. And your fan speeds, you can see your current temperature readouts. And we keep scrolling, we get into scheduling, so you can alter your scheduling here as well. And let's scroll through all of that. And then that last page that we just saw. All right, I'm going to hit house. And I can click into tanks. And I can just see some information. I can turn the water pump on and off and autofill on and off in here if I want to, or quit. I can go to genset. I can just see some information about the generator, the exerciser settings, AGS settings, quiet time settings, all that kind of good stuff. So lots of stuff in here. Okay, AC power. You can see I've got AC pass through because I'm on shore power. And if I click in, scroll all the way back to the beginning, we've got load shedding turned on, generator settling, etc. So lots of options here. You'll notice it skips a few, so these are the ones you can click on. The rest of these are just informational. Right. And DC power, similarly, house and chassis batteries, they're currently bridged and being charged in float. We've got 21 amps, 22 amps going to both of them right now. And it looks like I can press the knob for actions. That doesn't appear to do anything. So floor heat, come in, I can turn on my floor heat if I want to. All right, and finally we've got view, and that button turns off that information in case you want to just see the raw camera information, the raw Silverleaf information. If you hit view again, you'll get Silverleaf information without the sort of underlay of the video. Hit it again to get the video plus the graphics. I also forgot that there is a center button, so in the shape of a leaf. So there's actually 6 buttons on this control. That's what I just pressed. So, if the engine were on and now we're actually moving along, this might look more interesting. But you get an idea of this. So you can see some recent mile per gallon information. A whole bunch of interesting stuff in here. And then likely the Allison transmission status information. So Okay, that covers the Silverleaf panel. So I'm going to go put myself back to the mode that I like while driving, and we're going to go back into menu. I don't have an iPod hooked up, so this is grayed out, so I can't actually press on it. This is another way to get into navigation, and we can also come into setup. That's where I was earlier, so we've already covered all of this. And the best button when you're parked is house mode. So if you press that, what it'll do is it'll take the screens and shut them down after a short timeout, so they're not sitting here, you know, blaring into your in your face when you're here. So I know I skipped a few things I don't know, but maybe as I play with them more, I'll post some information about it. Touching the screen or any of the buttons, by the way, will turn the system back on, so you can get back into it, and you can just press house mode again if you want to get out of that mode. So, all right, back to house mode, and that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.